So before we had the news of Aretha Franklin's passing, we had planned this show on what happens after we die. And as we mourn the Queen of Soul, it seems a particularly good time to ask, is there something more? Something on the other side? Today's show tries to answer those questions. My first guest, Sherry Ame, was rushed to the hospital after weeks of feeling short of breath. Just 10 minutes after she arrived, she flatlined in her husband's arms. Sherry was dead for 90 minutes, but miraculously came back to life and now has a profound near-death experience to share. Watch. In early 2008, Sherry Ame was living life to the fullest.
I really was living a really wonderful life in my 20s, making good money, experiencing freedom, and really feeling on top of the world.
Sherry's good life came to a halt later that year when she was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma.
He waited till the door was closed, we both sat down, and I knew like something was up. And that's when he looked at me and he said, "You have cancer."
She immediately underwent 4 intensive rounds of chemotherapy, crippling her body.
There's no words to describe what that chemotherapy treatment was like. It was so extreme. I would not wish those side effects on anybody.
After battling the disease for 3 months, her cancer went into remission and she was declared cancer-free.
It's an incredible feeling to go in for those tests and realize they're saying it's shrinking.
But in April of 2010, Sherry suffered another setback, cardiac arrest.
The doctors were rushed in. They immediately performed CPR. Within the first 5-10 minutes, they were unsuccessful and were ready to call my time of death.
One doctor ordered CPR to continue.
He just turned into a drill sergeant and he told everybody what to do. They did chest compressions for over 90 minutes, still without success.
She was put on life support, then rushed to New York Presbyterian Columbia Hospital and underwent open heart surgery.
I knew I was somewhere else. I knew I had died. I would say instantaneously, when I flatlined, I immediately crossed over into this other realm. And I remember my body just floating in like this white space. And I felt as light as a feather. I felt free.
Sherry joins us now. Sherry, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So can we... Let's go to that moment in the hospital where you were flatlining, and they say that that's the moment you are dead if your heart is not working, if your heart is not pumping. Is it true that they wanted to stop CPR, and it was the one doctor who said, "Mm-mm"?
Yeah, they were ready to call my time of death. Everybody in that staff, in that room, in the emergency room, they were ready to call my time of death. One man in that entire room said, "No, we're not losing her," and ordered everybody like a drill sergeant, according to my father, to continue with CPR. And what they had to do was continue it long enough for him to actually install temporary life support.
What is the first memory you have of, your otherworldly experience?
Yeah, it was pretty instantaneous for me. I remember 1 minute being in this world, and the next minute being like, I died. I knew immediately. I was in this white space where I felt like I was formless, and I felt light as a feather. I felt free. And I remember feeling really free of the burdens of everyday life.
Was there a feeling of panic at all? Like I've died. Oh my God, I've died.
It was more, wow, this is so beautiful.
Really?
Yeah.
You remember that?
Absolutely.
And was it one of those things where you were above the room? Like, where were you seeing?
It wasn't like an out-of-body experience. I literally was in a whole other realm. So I was no longer in the physical hospital room. I was completely in another realm. I actually felt connected to my family on the other side, and I felt connected to the heavens. So there was no distinction of, okay, I'm dead and I'm in this other world. It was more, I just gracefully walked through this door and made this beautiful transition into another realm.
So there's much more to her experience and what happened in those moments, including an illumination on the life she had lived thus far. We're going to pick it up there when we come back. I'm back now with Sherry Ame, who says she had a life-changing near-death experience during cardiac arrest when she was dead for 90 minutes. So, Sherry, I know you said that in the moment it felt like you did a life review. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's funny because it actually wasn't just a life review of my current life. It was actually a life review of any experience my soul had ever undergone. So, which is so crazy. It was so crazy to me.
Did you believe in past lives prior to that moment?
I didn't think anything. I really didn't even know what a near-death experience was until I got back. So this was all very foreign to me. I had heard maybe of people that had had an out-of-body experience. I did not know what this meant. So yeah, I mean, this was definitely very, very foreign for me.
And do you feel like you got a window into prior lives?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing that I really learned was sometimes we all have like this common reoccurring theme that's happening in our lives, whether it's, poor finances or relationship trouble. I got to learn during my lifetime reviews what that common theme was and actually how to clear it.
Wow.
Because what happened was it was attaching to my soul during every lifetime.
I'm sorry, but I believe that. I feel like that's part of karma.
Yes.
And that you keep getting the chance to get it right.
Yes.
And eventually, hopefully you do, and you move on to the next plane.
Yes.
But I really think there's something to that.
Yeah.
The notion of being dead but not dead is confusing to people. And we have a doctor here. His name is Dr. Sam Parnia, a world expert on the science of death and the author of Erasing Death, which sounds like a great idea. Doc,
of course.
Thank you for being here. So
Pleasure.
How could she be dead but not dead for 90 minutes?
Well, it's a very good question, of course. The reality is that we all have a perception of death. And this goes back millennia, which is essentially that death is a moment. There's a time when you're either alive or you're dead. And the reason we think that is because when the heart stops, you have no more blood flowing into your brain, into your other organs. The brain shuts down immediately. A person becomes lifeless, motionless, and they are dead. Or even if you go back to the French Revolution, if somebody had lost their head, there's no more blood getting into the brain and it shuts. However, what's amazing is that about 50, 60 years ago, we discovered CPR, and we found that actually you can artificially restart the heart or produce a circulation, get blood flowing around the body even after a person has died. And that made our definitions more ambiguous. And what is now even more interesting is that we understand that it's only after a person has died, which makes perfect sense, that the cells inside the body start to undergo their own process of death. So when somebody's heart stops, it's only then that the cells will start to die. And that process takes many hours, possibly days.
How has your outlook on death and life changed as a result of this experience?
I am definitely no longer afraid of death. And that was something that I had feared my entire life.
Yeah.
And what I learned is that fear of death really prevents you from truly living. And so if you were to know me prior to my near-death experience and now, it's like I'm two completely different people, because I lived pre-near-death, I lived my life very, all my decisions were like based around fear. Fear of what other people thought, fear of what other people would say, fear of not being good enough, or fear of being unworthy. Even though I was successful in my earlier years, every decision was still based upon that. Now I flipped the script. I'm doing everything different.
I love that. I completely believe in that. I think if you're making decisions out of fear in general, you're making them out of the wrong place. I'm so glad you're well. And you've got your new heart.
Yes.
You look amazing. And thank you for telling your story to us. All the best to you. Wow. We'll be right back.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.